Very happy to meet you all once again through this e-content form. This is Lenin from PG and Research Department of English, St. Joseph College of Arts and Science, Kadalur. This e-content is for 2nd M English 3rd semester, a paper called Subaltern Literature from Unit 1 on a poem called A Letter from the French by Henry Newbolt. So this is the poem. I was out early today spying about from the top of a haystack, such a lovely morning, and when I mounted again to canter back, I saw across a field in the broad sunlight a young gunner, subaltern, stalking along with a rook rifle held at a reed, and would be, you believe it, a domestic cat soberly marching beside him. So I laughed and felt quite well disposed to the youngster and shouted top of the morning to him and wished him good sport, and then I remembered my rank and his and I what to be doing. And I rode nearer and added, I can only suppose you have not seen the commander in chief's order forbidding English officers annoy their allies by hunting and shooting. But he stood and saluted and said earnestly, I beg your pardon, sir, I was going to shoot a sparrow to feed my cat with. So there was a whole picture. The lovely early morning, the occasional shell screeching and scattering past us, the empty landscape, empty except for the young gunner saluting and the cat anxiously watching his every movement. I may be wrong or may have told it badly, but it struck me as well being extremely ridiculous. So, Henry Newbolt's A Letter from the Front is a poem for those who do not particularly like poetry. Why? Because the poem, as we saw in the earlier slides, the poem is divided into three parts, three stanzas. It is not like a traditional poem. So, if you want to read a traditional poetry, that too a 20th century poetry, you may be disappointed because it is not only a poem, it is also a poem for cat lovers. Without rhyme and regular meter, the poem is highly conversational. Why? Because we have a conversation between commander-in-chief and the young gunner. So more of a conversation. In fact, it appears more as an actual letter and not a poem. Newbold shares an entertaining and curious story and does not attempt to affix a moral or explain the point. It is not more of a didactic teaching, moral teaching, as we saw in the Elizabethan literature, as we saw in the Dr. Samuel Johnson's writing, that it be dried and let it be pope. It's not like that kind. It is only a curious and entertaining story because we have a cat, a shooting gunner, a commander in chief. They are just conversing in the war front. So the poem is a simple tale. In the midst of war, an officer rides out early on his horse, running across the fields and climbing haystacks for a better view of the terrain. Keep in mind, a poem showcases a war front, a war battlefield. So, an officer rides out early in his horse, early in the morning, running across the fields and climbing haystacks for a better view of the terrain. Why? Because they are taking the aerial route in order to have the clear picture of enemy's troops, enemy's camps. As he is preparing to return to the lines, he spies junior artillery officer crossing the field in front of him, carrying a light rifle designed for shooting birds and accompanied by a house cat. A strange picture, a unique picture, a disturbing picture in fact also, because seriously people are preparing, soldiers are preparing for the war, but the officer spies a junior artillery officer. Artillery officer means a person who has the capability of or who has the permission of carrying guns, crossing the field in front of him, carrying a light rifle. Please make a note here, designed for shooting birds and accompanied by a house cat. House cat, a junior officer carrying a rifle. It is not designed to shoot the enemies, people, but it is designed for shooting the birds. That too accompanying a house cat, a domestic cat. What would the officer would think? What picture what thought he might have heard. The young soldier and his cat marched together soberly. Again, mark here as if forming a small military parade. The young soldier, a person who had the gun for shooting the birds, also his domestic cat marched together soberly, not happily, not rejoicingly, not delightfully, but soberly. Soberly means anxious, sad, not very happy, not in enjoying mood. As if forming a small military parade. We come across so many military jargons here because it is a poem on war. So we have so many military jargons: war, and then parade, and then spies in the previous lines also. To see a man hunting with a cat in peacetime might appear strange. Okay, if a person goes with a cat during evening time, during the sunset, near the lake or along the lake, it's okay, it is permissible. But war front, they are fighting, they are making arrangements for the battle to be fought. But a person who is accompanying a cat walking very soberly, what picture is this? During war and so close to the front, the scene is absurd. Mark here, absurd. War is absurd. That's what the author intentionally wanted to convey through the readers through this poem. War is absurd and draws from the mounted officer a laugh and a casual reading. See, people are very seriously getting ready for the war, but casual reading, top of the morning, and good sport. War is not a sport. War is a lethal weapon, a deadly weapon. It is meant for killing people. It is meant for killing lives. It is meant for looting. But see the words used by the author when he intentionally good sport, top of the morning, early on his heart. So these are all the indication that war must be stopped. That's the reason why he also mentioned absurd. For that moment, the war is forgotten in the lovely early morning. When you compare the lovely early morning in the romantic century, in the romantic period, you can get the birds chirping sound, the beautiful sound of a cuckoo, the beautiful sound of birds chirping. Just compare the lovely early morning with that of Wordsworth, with that of Shelley, with that of Keats, with that of Coleridge. How they compare the lovely early morning, how the 20th century man, the modern man, have that lovely early morning. He's getting ready for the war. But perhaps one of the occasional shells that screeches and scratches past recalls the sinner also not only to his rank, but to his duty. He's just having a nostalgic moment of lovely early morning. He just remembers, he just going to that lovely picture, lovely early morning. What do we do in the morning? So we run for the school, we run for the college, we run for the work, we do something busy in the morning. But compare with that of romantics, they take the lovely early morning to God's gift, nature. So the officer is being just remember to his work, his duty. See that word, occasional shells that screeches and scatters. Screeches. It's a very crude noise, no? Screeches. When some sort of a military vehicle passes on, when some sort of a tanker passes on, you get a screeching sound, not the sweet sound, not the sweet melody. So it just recalls the senior officer not only to his rank but also to his duty. He wants the young gunner of the commander-in-chief order that English officers have been forbidden to annoy their allies by hunting. So the senior officer just remembers the subordinate, the junior, the inferior one, by not to hunt the birds, annoy their allies by hunting. He's been advised, he's been informed, he's been commanded, he's been ordered by the senior officer not to hunt the birds. Earnestly, seriously, the young gunner salutes and explains he is only shooting sparrows with which to feed his cat. And as the poem states, so there was the whole picture. When you look up the poem, it's a very small poem to be in length. to be serious. Just very small poem, but have loads of meaning. The inferior, the subordinate, the subaltern. Subaltern means, keep in mind, subaltern refers to a person who is inferior in the military camp. Earnestly, the young gunner salutes and explains he is only shooting sparrows. Keep in mind, my dear students and the viewers, the poem is about the war. The poem clearly indicates the clear picture of the war front. But look at the subordinate, look at the junior, look at the young gunner. He is going to shoot the sparrows with which to feed his cat. That's the reason why they walked soberly. So obviously gun is to shoot somebody, to kill someone. It is a weapon of killing, deadly weapon, lethal weapon. But see how they are using, shooting sparrows for feeding his cat. As the poem states that there was picture. So the last part of the poem, the last two lines of the poem are as strange as the story itself. They comment that the writer may be wrong and may have even told it badly. Is the poem unfinished or carelessly crafted? All are given is a letter writer's personal opinion that the event was extremely ludicrous. Extremely ludicrous. Keep in mind, students. The poem aims at the pathetic picture of the 20th century, the futility of war, World War I and World War II. Both wars caused inevitable loss to human lives and properties. In fact, England was ruined, totally ruined in terms of economics. Totally ruined, both the wars. Apart from that, World War I and World War II caused human lives as victims. The modern man has lost its temper. The modern man has lost its value. That's the reason why it was given extremely ludicrous. Ludicrous, something nonsense. That's the reason why we see in the previous previous lines of the poem, in the beginning of the poem, it was very absurd. In the war field, a young gunner carrying the rifle with that of a cat for shooting sparrows. How come he is supposed to do like that? War is absurd, and nearly everything that happens can only be understood as random and extremely ridiculous. That's what I mentioned earlier. War is absurd. It has no meaning. It can only take the lives of people. It can wound a large section of people. It can make people visionless, deaf and dumb, invalid. War can do. That's all. And everything that happens can only be understood as random and extremely ridiculous. Almost unbelievably, the jarring contrast between the empty fields of a serene early morning. Empty fields of a serene early morning. Serene means calm, peace, noiseless. Early morning, the occasional death-dealing shells that screech and scatter past the men is casually accepted. Just compare and contrast. One side, lovely early morning, serene early morning, and the other side, the screeches of a tanker. Shells means bombs. Both soldiers have become so accustomed to death, and the artillery fire is incidental and unremarkable, merely a counterpoint to birds' song. Both soldiers, the higher official and the junior young gunner, the subordinate, are so become accustomed to death. There is also one man, the senior, the commander-in-chief, is getting ready for the battlefield. He is going to kill people. He is going to take the lives of people. Here also we have a young gunner who is going to shoot the sparrows to feed his cat. Both are very determined of the term called death. But the poet very clearly indicates that war is absurd. That's the reason why he intentionally kept the part of a young gunner, a cat and a sparrow. What are you going to do with the gun? I'm going to shoot the sparrow. Is it not laughable? Yes, it is. What do you suppose, when if you have a gun, if you have a knife, what are you going to do? I'm going to just dig the soil. Is it what the knife is meant for? No, it is not serving its purpose. That's the reason why the author clearly, intentionally made the counterpart of a young gunner carrying a rifle to shoot the sparrow. If you see somebody walking in the road having a rifle, we clearly determines that he is going to shoot somebody. If he says, no, 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 I'm going to shoot a mango in the tree, what do you feel? The author just uh, made a ludicrous statement here. It is also highly ironic that the commander-in-chief's order has made it a crime to shoot a sparrow, while men are encouraged to kill as many German soldiers as they possibly can. He's just giving you the orders. In the previous part of in the previous slides, you might have witnessed. If not so, please move to the former slides. He is giving clear indication to his young gunner: do not harm the soldiers. Do not soldiers as well. Do not, sorry. It has made a crime to shoot a sparrow. You cannot shoot a sparrow, but you can kill a man. Why? Because they are opponents. Why? Because they are enemies. Why? Because they are opposite to you. Hunting and shooting that might annoy one's allies is forbidden, while mowing down the enemy with machine gun fire is the duty of every good soldier. This is what the author intentionally placing. You cannot shoot a sparrow, you cannot hurt a bird, you cannot kill a sparrow, but you can kill man. You can use gunfire, you can use machine gun. Killing a man is not at all a serious thing, rather killing a sparrow. This is what the author wanted to express very clearly. Please do not wage war. Please do not encourage people to fight. We see a peculiar picture of a cat soberly watching and anxiously watching. The cat is the only living that seems to acknowledge this war. Why the author used cat here? It is estimated that 5 lakh cats were sent to the trenches of the First World War. Interesting fact, no? 5 lakh cats. Why? They provide a valuable service in hunting the mice and rats that infested soldiers' living quarters. Just see how cats were very useful in the war field also. 5 lakh cats were employed in the World War One. For providing a valuable service in hunting the mice and rats that cause the soldiers' living quarters. So it just damaged mice and rats, damaged the living quarters of the soldiers. In order to get rid of that, in order to stop that, in order to stop this nonsense, cats were being employed. They were used to detect gas, and they became beloved mascots and companions for troops. Mascots as soldiers. Some cats were even credited with saving men's lives. So cats were an essential form of helpers to the soldiers in World War One. They used to detect gas, they saved men's lives, and moreover, the valuable service for hunting the mice and rats, which created nonsense in the soldier quarters. Sir Henry Newbolt, the author of Letter from the Front, is most often known for his blind patriotism and poetic propaganda. His most famous poem, Vita Lampada, compares battle to a competitive school sporting event. Its refrain, play up and play the game, was used in World War One recruiting posters. So a writer who is so close with the war strategies with World War One, that's the reason why the phrase also he used, which has been used in the World War One also. The poem was published in 1897. Newbolt grew to dislike both the poem and attention he received, and it's kind of so the attention, what sort of attention the poem got, the criticism, how the poem got. Newbolt himself acknowledges and said it's a kind of Frankenstein's monster that I created 30 years ago. So he's bringing a new term, Frankenstein monster. This is the words of the poet himself, Frankenstein's monster. I hope you people all are aware of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. If not so, please browse, please know, please get valuable thought on Frankenstein. Who is Frankenstein? Why he is created? On what part? Why he is Frankenstein's monster? Monster, the first non-human living, non-human being. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein's. That forms the base of today's robot. By 1917, when Newbolt published Letter from the Front, he had worked for nearly 3 years in the British government's propaganda office. In fact, he is a government employee. He worked in the British office, the two in the time 1917. So it is very clearly indicative that 1914 to 1918 World War One. So he had seen the viciousness of World War One. That's the reason why he wrote poem like this. Perhaps this free verse poem reveals the emerging consciousness of a writer who, however briefly or obliquely, admits to the absurdity of modern warfare. Please note this one-line story of the entire poem, this free verse poem, absurdity of modern warfare. It's not welfare, it is warfare. What on earth this war could bring? What is the ultimate goal of war? Nothing but death. Nothing but death. This is what T.S. Eliot done in his Wasteland. War has no meaning. Burials, corpses everywhere, human dead bodies. This is what Wilfred Owen did. Strange Meeting. And quintessential war poet of the 20th century. Wilfred Owen, the war generation, war poets. Ernest Hemingway, other war poet, other war writer who worked in the war front. So we have loads of writers who wrote on the impact of war. So this is also our author Henry Newbolt also wanted to communicate to the readers absurdity of modern warfare. There is no use of war unless absurdity of modern warfare. So with this note, the poem ends. So it's very clear. The poem clearly passes a message that war has no meaning except inevitable loss to human lives and property. Thank you for listening to this e-content. Hope you people will understand. Thank you for listening. Looking forward for the next e-content. Meet you all soon. Thank you. By 1917, when Newbolt published Letter from the Front, he had worked for nearly 3 years in the British government's propaganda office. In fact, he is a government employee. He worked in the British office, the two in the time 1917. So it is very clearly indicative that 1914 to 1918 World War One. So he had seen the viciousness of World War One. That's the reason why he wrote poem like this. Perhaps this free verse poem reveals the emerging consciousness of a writer who, however briefly or obliquely, admits to the absurdity of modern warfare. Please note this one-line story of the entire poem, this free verse poem, absurdity of modern warfare. It's not welfare, it is warfare. What on earth this war could bring? What is the ultimate goal of war? Nothing but death. Nothing but death. This is what T.S. Eliot done in his Wasteland. War has no meaning. burials, corpses everywhere, human dead bodies. This is what Wilfred Owen did. Strange meeting. And quintessential war poet of the 20th century, Wilfred Owen, the war generation, war poets. Ernst Hemingway, other war poet, other war writer who worked in the war front. So we have lots of writers who wrote on the impact of war. So this is also our author Henry Newbolt also wanted to communicate to the readers absurdity of modern warfare. There is no use of war unless absurdity of modern warfare. So with this note, the poem ends. So it's very clear. The poem clearly passes a message that war has no meaning except inevitable loss to human lives and property. Thank you for listening to this e-content. Hope you people will understand. Thank you for listening. Looking forward for the next e-content. Meet you all soon. Thank you.